protesters walking out during Michael D Higgins' speech at the Holocaust Memorial Day event at Dublin's Mansion House. Just have a listen to what Michael D Higgins had to say.
It is important that all remaining hostages are released and that all phases of the agreement are fully implemented. It is to be hoped that the agreement will not only bring an end to the horrific loss of life and destruction which has taken place, but that it will also mark the beginning of the meaningful discussions, the sustained diplomatic initiatives which have been missing from the international community with tragic consequences, and that it will commence a meaningful peace and security to Israel, Palestine and the greater region, a peace that will address the root causes of the conflict as well as its aftermath and be premised on the upholding of human rights.
Now, that was the President referencing the conflict in Gaza during his speech at the event marking the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. Daniel Epstein-O'Dowd is the spokesperson for the Jewish community in Ireland. He joins us now. Daniel, what did you make of President Higgins' speech?
Well, I think I speak for many in the Jewish community when we say just how dismayed we were at that speech yesterday. Really, it went against the wishes of everybody in attendance that politics really not be brought in to commemoration of the Holocaust, to honouring Holocaust survivors, victims and their families. I thought it was really, it was quite incredible seeing a president act with such impunity to essentially double down in the face of criticism.
Was it impunity, Daniel? I read the president's speech last night. I struggled genuinely to find a sentence in it that people would disagree with. He said he hoped the ceasefire would hold for people on both sides of the conflict. It's difficult to see what the issue is with that.
Well, I think first and foremost, it's that Holocaust Memorial Day shouldn't be about anything other than the Holocaust, and I think that was very much made clear. Tommy Reichenthal made that point in the lead up to this. They said, look, he pleaded with the president not to bring politics into this, and that very much shouldn't have been anywhere. I noted the commemoration of the Auschwitz liberation, which will be ongoing. There will be no political speeches. So I think it was that.
What was political about what? I'm sorry to cut across you. What was political about what President Higgins said?
I think it was certainly going into, we look at the paragraph where he's referring to, the grief caused by the response to October 7th. Very much focused.
He also strongly condemned September 7th. October 7th, excuse me.
Well, I accept he condemned it, but then, it's very much disassociating himself with many of his actions post October 7th, and then it's very much emphasising and, I suppose, a lot of the criticisms he has of the response of, Israel to October 7th. And I think it is very pointed that this occurred in a Holocaust Memorial Day speech that essentially, it's Holocaust inversion in many ways, looking and using that very powerful emotional context of when human failure occurred to stop evil and nearly turning that spotlight and kind of wink, wink, nod, nod.
But I'm just putting a theory to you here. Is it not, when you're giving a speech on the Holocaust, is it not also important to put it in the context of modern day, to talk about what's happening in the world today? Is that necessarily a bad thing to do?
No, I do accept your point that very much the Holocaust should not be confined to a particular time and place. But I also think it's very important to recognise that the Holocaust was profoundly generated and fueled by hatred of Jews. And I think a lot of people would not necessarily accept the president speaking out a little bit more, but certainly saying, well, the president only a few months ago referred to claims of anti-Semitism as a PR exercise. He's come up with some very base conspiratorial claims, which have, hit very hard for many in the Israeli and Jewish community here. So there's a feeling that...
What conspiratorial claims? I'm curious as to what the conspiratorial claims that he made were.
Well, I think one of them only 2 or 3 months ago was referring to or claiming that Israel wished to settle Egypt. I think also before that as well, accusing the Israeli embassy of leaking in a letter that was in the public domain already, his letter to the new president of Iran, which is a little bit fawning to say the least. So I think
So is it more
trends,
about that really than anything he said yesterday? I mean, was it a case of regardless of what he said yesterday, you were going to find fault in it because you feel he has form?
well, he certainly does have form, and I do take your point. I think there were a lot of people in that room who were willing to give the president a chance, albeit that he didn't deserve one necessarily, that despite everything he has done since October 7th or spoken out or failed to even recognise what the Jewish community has gone through, that we were going to give his words a chance. And speaking to many of those people who protested yesterday, there was a reason they actually didn't walk out immediately or, protest immediately. The president started speaking. The condition in their mind was the minute that it became about anything other than honouring survivors, victims, and the Holocaust itself. And I think that was that turn point, that once it became about, Michael D Higgins' thoughts on the Middle East or, his pontification, I think that was the
His pontification, I think that's unfair, is it not? He made a couple of points, pretty balanced points about the conflict. To be fair to him, on this occasion, I didn't see much by way of pontification.
Well, I think this is the thing, is that, you've seen, as I've kind of referred to previously, referring and, emphasising your criticisms of Israel, noting the pieces of the Israeli response to October 7th that you have such an issue with on Holocaust Memorial Day. I think that's very, very pointed.
Okay. And Daniel, just very quickly, can I just briefly ask you, the decision to remove protesters who were just simply standing with their back to the president, do you have a view on that?
I do. I think, it's really a strong sign of a good democracy that people can protest robustly. And in this way, it was very dignified, very silent. And I think just the response of security at that event was shocking, very physical, very much escalated the situation. I think to a lot of people looking on, I noticed people like the Deputy First Minister, Emma Little-Pengelly, Senator Gerard Craughwell, Councillor Jim O'Leary have all spoken out about just how the security response was so heavy-handed and totally wrong in that sense. Daniel, and I would notice the president wasn't thrown off by any of the silent protests either. So Daniel, totally unnecessary.
We'll leave it there. Daniel Epstein-O'Dowd, spokesperson for the Jewish community in Ireland. Thank you for talking to Newstalk Breakfast this morning. You getting in touch in relation to the conversation we were having with Daniel Epstein-O'Dowd at the start of the show in relation to the Holocaust Memorial event and President Higgins' speech and some of the protests that were there. Dee says, Shane, if every Catholic Remembrance Day was commenced with a lecture on all the actions of all Catholics worldwide, how would you feel about that? Should the Shamrock presentation at the White House this year be accompanied by a lecture on the Magdalene laundries? If you can't understand the sensitivity in this, it's very concerning, says Dee. Of course I can understand the sensitivity. Not sure they're comparable, but thank you for the text nonetheless.
People with different views, as ever, on the Newstalk Breakfast text line, which is why we like to open it up to you. It is time to start to recognise, address and remember the genocide that is taking place today and in the past in Gaza, says this listener.
Another listener says the president needs to remember he's not a politician. It's not a good day when the president is not welcome to an event because he can't keep his personal and political views to himself, says that texter. Look, I think Michael D Higgins has strayed beyond the boundaries of his office, and I'm uncomfortable about it on a number of occasions. But I thought his speech yesterday, Ciara, I thought it was kind of measured and balanced.
I didn't.
Yeah,
I actually didn't, and I know I know when I say this that this is not going to be what people are going to want to hear, because many people will agree with him. But I thought there was two issues within his speech. First of all, I think the chickens are coming home to roost
but that's
for
a
Michael
different
D.
thing. But
No.
his actual
That's
speech,
not
though.
the point I was about to make. But I think he's politicised his role to the extent that he's now
I
controversial.
don't disagree with that.
But the two issues I had with it, I suppose, was that I don't think it was the time and the place to mention the Middle East conflict, because I think people are there who have lost so many family members, their parents, their grandparents, relations. I think it's an issue of huge sensitivity. So I think it wasn't the time and place to bring it up at all. But also, all the stuff he mentioned about anti-Semitism was filled with relativism. It was anti-Semitism along with racism and homophobia and Islamophobia, and it was like putting it into a category with loads of other things on that day, when anti-Semitism has killed more people. Like the Holocaust was a horrendous singular event in history where the industrialized murder, mass murder, it is where the term genocide comes from.
I think
the
President Higgins is aware
relativism
of
and
that.
the mentioning of current Middle East things, it wasn't the time and place. There's lots of times and places for that.
I thought it was a balanced and sensitive speech, but let us know what you think.